Vamscha Shri Rupam Sakurajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishware Rishabhana Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. That Prananath Govind got me to raise my hands. Okay, so this is a very familiar verse to me because I just gave class on it on Sunday in Columbus, and we happen to be doing it. I'm doing it again today. So we can all chant. Matras pashastu kaunteya. Shitoshna sukha dukkada.
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Agama paino nityas.
Agamapaino Nityas
Diksha Bharata.
Namastiteshasva Bharata
Matra pashastu kaunteya.
Matraspashastu Kaunteya
Toshna sukha dukkada.
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Agama paino nityas.
Agamapaino Nityas
Samsitikshasva Bharata.
Namastiteshasva Bharata
Matra spashastu kaunteya.
Matraspashastu Kaunteya
Shitoshna sukha dukkada.
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Agama paino nityas.
Agamapaino Nityas
Samsitikshasva Bharata.
Namastiteshasva Bharata
Well,
Matrasparsastu Kanteya
Matraspashastu Kaunteya
Titoshnasu Kadukada
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Agamapaino Nityas
Agamapaino Nityas
Samstitikshashva Bharata
Namastiteshasva Bharata Matras. Go ahead, Chaitanya.
No, you can go, Mataji.
Matrasparshastu Kaunteya
Matraspashastu Kanteya
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Agamapaino Nityas
Agamapaino Nityas
Tam Sitikshasva Bharata
Tamstikshasva Bharata
Matrasparshastu Kaunteya
Matraspashastu Kanteya
Sukha Dukkada
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Pahino Nityas
Agamapaino Nityas
Titikshava Bharata
Tamstikshasva
Tamsitikshasva Bharata
Matraspashastu Kanteya
Matrasparshastu Kaunteya
Itoshna Sukha Dukkada
Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada
Agamapaino Nityas
Agamapaino Nityas
Tamstikshasva Bharata
Tamsitikshasva Bharata
You can go, Tootsie. You can go.
Matra sparshasthu kaunteya.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya.
Itoshna sukha dukkadaha.
Shitoshna sukha dukkha.
Agama paino nitya.
Agamapaino nitya.
Tam titikshasva bharata.
Titikshasva bharata.
Matra sparshasthu kaunteya.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya.
Itoshna sukha dukkada.
Shitoshna sukha dukkha.
Agama paino nityas.
Agamapaino nitya.
Tam titikshasva bharata.
Titikshasva bharata.
Matra sparshantu kaunteya.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya.
Shitoshna sukha dukkada.
Shitoshna sukha dukkha.
Agamapaino anitya.
Agamapaino nitya.
Sangsitiksha bharata.
Titikshasva bharata.
Matra sparshasthu kaunteya.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya.
Itoshna sukha dukkada.
Shitoshna sukha dukkha.
Agama paino nityas.
Agamapaino nitya.
Tansitikshap sashva bharata.
Titikshasva
Bharata.
Matra sparsha,
sparsha.
sensory perception.
Sensory perception.
Perception
Two
Two
only.
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 Kaunteya,
Kaunteya.
Yeah.
son of Kunti,
O son of
Son of Kunti.
Sita,
Sita.
winter,
winter.
Nature.
Ushna,
Ushna.
summer,
Summer.
Sukha,
Sukha.
happiness,
Happiness.
Dukkha,
Dukkha.
and pain,
And pain.
Daha, giving,
Giving.
Agama,
Agama.
appearing,
Appearing.
Hearing.
Apayinaha,
Ina.
disappearing,
Disappearing.
Anityaha,
Nityaha.
non-permanent,
Impermanent.
on
Gone.
all of them,
All of them.
All of them.
Titikshasva,
Titikshasva.
just try to tolerate,
Just try to tolerate.
Bharata,
Bharata,
descendant of the Bharata dynasty.
Descendant
A descendant
Descendant
of the dynasty.
If everyone can mute them and put on their cameras, I'd appreciate it. Translation. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O Skyna Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunctions, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magh, January, February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshatriyas. And although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion, by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya, illusion. The two different names address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as Kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Matras pashastu kaunteya shitoshna sukadukada agama paino nityastam stitikshasva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O Skyna Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharani Nivasesa Smivadi Prastachadi Satani. If there's anyone else who can turn on their cameras, probably we got maybe 1/4 of the people or less who have their cameras on. Okay, so this verse I find is a really important verse so that one can continue without deviation from Krishna consciousness. Now, we're not applying this verse to our job, whatever our job is that we have to do it. We have to do our job, that's true. But I like to see it as far as Krishna conscious activities, that nothing should stop us from our Krishna conscious activities. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances of and disappearances of happiness and distress. So this is material happiness and material distress come and go, and you shouldn't, get too much into either one of them. You just go on with doing your service no matter what. The two examples given here don't apply very much here, but in India, okay, you take a bath outside. This is at least the way it was, or inside when there's no heat. So you take a bath and it's cold water. You got to take your bath because you have to do that every day. Also, then cooking. It doesn't apply so much here. I mean, it does get hot in the kitchen, but lots of houses have air conditioning now. So, but the point is that there are going to be things that we have to do, and there are going to be so many. We're going to be happy sometimes, and we're going to be distressed sometimes. You can't always be distressed, and you can't always be happy. No matter what, the happiness and distress comes and goes. So whatever it may be you're experiencing, and a lot of time it's not really happy, not distressed, you're just okay. Whatever the case may be, you have to go on with your devotional service. So that's the way I look at this, because these varnas, there's the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Srila Prabhupada did say half of his what was it, like basically half of his job, I don't think he said job, has been completed, but the Varnashram hasn't been completed. He wanted us to learn Varnashram. So how are we going to learn Varnashram? The only way we can really do it is basically in our society. we can have, if we get a large enough society, we can have Brahmins, we can have Kshatriyas, we can have Vaishyas, and we can have Shudras. Of course, people would like to be generally, people don't want to be a Shudra. I don't want to be the Shudra, although I may do Shudra's work of service. But, it's not according to birth, it's what's natural for you. And Prabhupada, the first thing he wanted to do was establish Brahmins, to try to make Brahmins out of very malechas and low-class people, tried to create them and change them into Brahmins. And it is possible, and he has done it, and it is scripturally accurate to actually, it says like, just like a chemist can make gold from bell, metal, and mercury or something. So similarly, one can change from whatever particular varna one is. Like if he's a Shudra or less than a Shudra, he can become a Brahmin by following the instructions of the bona fide representative of Krishna, of God. So if we follow these instructions, then we can become Brahmins. And that's what we need. Prabhupada says that the Brahmins are like the head, Kshatriyas are like the arms, the Vaishyas are like the belly, and the Shudras are like the legs. And all of them are important. Every part of your body is important. If your legs hurt, you can't walk, you can still function, but it's not as important as the head. Without the head, it's a dead body. So he was saying how our society today, there's no head, there are no Brahmins. So, and there's pretty much no Kshatriyas either, but maybe a few of them. And there are Vaishyas and there are Shudras. So he was trying to create Brahmins. So what is a Brahmin? A Brahmin is someone who is very thoughtful. The qualities of a Brahmin: he's honest, he's peaceful, non-violent. So many different qualities that Brahmins have. And Prabhupada tried to establish that. So we should find out, first he was trying to establish Brahmins, but ultimately trying to establish Vaishnavas, which is even superior to Brahmins. So we are practicing to become Vaishnavas. So this is, when I read this verse, this is the duty that I think of. I have to chant so many rounds. I have to do different services for Krishna every day. I have to read. So this is my duty, and I shouldn't let anything interfere with that duty. And of course, you do have to maintain your family, so you have a job, but your job is not like that's the duty you have to do. You can change that. Just like Arjuna was a Kshatriya, but he couldn't really change. That is his nature. He's born that way, and he acts that way, and he thinks that way, and that's what he has to act at. It's difficult for a Kshatriya to change to anything, to a Brahmin, or although sometimes they may. But that's not when I see duty, I do not think of your particular duty as your service in the material world. Whatever you are, if you're a doctor, you can become a computer programmer, you can become a hotel manager, you can change. Doesn't matter what type of job you have. In this Kali Yuga, you can do anything. But your spiritual things have to be maintained. That's what I find is the most important thing. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge. So we have certain rules and regulations, and by following them, we get knowledge. Because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya. So it's really simple. We have certain rules and regulations. They help us. We follow them. Knowledge can come. You don't even have to be able to read to obtain knowledge. I mean, of course, it certainly helps, but that's the way most people from hearing. But you can hear, you can get realizations. Krishna's in your heart, so we can get knowledge and devotion, and then liberation from Maya, freedom from illusion. And it all starts with just following some rules and regulations and making sure you follow them, even when you're happy, even when you're distressed. I mean, happiness, you may think, it doesn't interfere, but sometimes happiness does interfere. You get too happy and you just forget about your service. I mean, like the example is Daruka, who was fanning Krishna, and he was in such ecstasy from fanning. So he was so happy, and that's spiritual. That's not just this temporary happiness. That's actually spiritual happiness. And even that, he controlled that. So because it was interfering with his fanning, he wasn't fanning as nicely. So he controlled his own spiritual ecstasy so he can fan Krishna better. So, but generally, we don't have so much of a problem with happiness interfering with our service, but we have to know that it certainly can. Okay, 23. I have a bunch of notes from my last class. I can read some of them. Not really notes. They're quotes. This is from a purport in the Bhagavatam 1:16:4. The king, being the representative of the Lord, has to execute the will of the Lord. Thus, as soon as Maharaj Parikshit saw that a lower class man in the dress of a king was hurting the legs of a cow and a bull, at once he arrested and punished him. The king cannot tolerate insults to the most important animal, the cow, nor can he tolerate disrespect for the most important man, the Brahmin. So this is another thing where we're saying tolerate without being disturbed, but there are times where things that we do not tolerate. You don't just tolerate. And what for devotees, what we don't tolerate is if another devotee is being hurt, someone is hurting another devotee, fighting with him, beating him or her, you should become like fire, Prabhupada says. You should become like fire and help that devotee. We can even help defend ourselves, but lots of times it says where we tolerate. We should tolerate whatever's happening. We see it's coming from Krishna. But when someone is physically hurting a devotee, we should immediately stop that. Also, if someone is blaspheming a devotee, we should not tolerate that either. There's things you can do. You can defeat them, or you can, if you can't defeat them, in other ages you can kill them. That is not at all what we should do today. Things are a little different nowadays, and you can just walk away. So if someone is blaspheming somebody else, you shouldn't listen to it. You should walk away. So there's what we should know when we say tolerate. We shouldn't just be a foolish and just let people and listen. Tolerate blasphemy, tolerate insults, tolerate physical abuse. We shouldn't tolerate these things. We should do something about them. I would have to say, even if they're happening to us, but definitely if they're happening to another devotee, or if another devotee is being blasphemed and we're hearing, we should not tolerate that. Brigamuni, he tested the tolerance of the Lord by purposely kicking his chest But instead of being angry at Brigamuni, the Lord begged his pardon, saying that Brigamuni's leg might have been badly hurt because his chest is too hard. So this was the test when Brigamuni tested Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. And when he tested Vishnu, it was a corporal offense. Brahma was just a mental offense, and Shiva was a verbal offense. And corporal offense is the greatest. And he tolerated it. So of course, Krishna is the most tolerant. But then there's things Krishna doesn't tolerate. He doesn't tolerate when his devotees are being mistreated. He does not tolerate things. He can tolerate insults to himself, but he can't tolerate them for the devotees. Another, in the purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 3:15:1, it says, no sane man or woman can tolerate the non-devotees giving trouble to the devotees. So a sane man or a sane woman can't tolerate that. These are some other things you can't tolerate. And as Radhanath Swami says quite often, one's greatness has to be estimated by one's ability to tolerate provoking situations. So that's, you can see how someone is so great, how they can tolerate provoking situations, very difficult situations. Srila Prabhupada tolerated so very much, in the beginning for 1 year, struggled like anything, just to help us, not getting anything for himself. He even said, you don't know how happy I was living in Vrindavan. I mean, it was so great. Prananath Govind just spent some time in Vrindavan. It's really nice just living in Vrindavan. And he left Vrindavan to come to America, to come to New York. And he did it just for us, all those billions of souls that are out there, to try to help them. And he was successful, and his success is shown because it's still going on. Still, these souls are taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada. So this is a characteristic of a pure devotee is that he excuses any offense by an ignorant rascal. A characteristic of Krishna, however, is that he cannot tolerate blasphemy of his devotees. So the devotee can excuse the people, but Krishna cannot. He can't. That's that. The characteristics of a Vaishnava and the characteristic of the Lord mentioned in this verse are very significant. In his Shikshashtaka 3, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is taught the characteristic of a Vaishnava. Tranadapi sunichena tarori vasahisnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Krishna, however, cannot tolerate any insults or blasphemy against the Vaishnava. For example, Prahlad Maharaj was chastised by his father, Hiranyakashipu, in so many ways, but although Prahlad tolerated this, Krishna did not. The Lord therefore came in the form of Nrsingadev. Nrsingadev is a form of the Lord, and he's not tolerating offenses to devotees, to kill Hiranyakashipu. Similarly, although Srila Haridas Thakur tolerated the insult of Gopal Chakravarti, Krishna could not. The Lord immediately punished Gopal Chakravarti by making him suffer from leprosy. So the Lord, he tolerates so much, but he doesn't tolerate what's happening to the devotee, offenses to the devotee. So the Lord can tolerate insults upon himself by any miscreant, because the Father tolerates even insults from the Son, but he never tolerates insults upon his devotee. So he, just like, because Krishna is our Father, The son gets upset with the father, and the father doesn't, he forgives him. He's not intolerant, he's understanding. But when the father, when they insult his devotees or they hurt his devotees, he doesn't tolerate. So the devotee of the Lord does not retaliate against the wrongdoer, but the Lord does. The Lord does not tolerate any mischief done to the devotee by the miscreants. The Lord can excuse a person on his own account, but he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotees. Therefore, the Lord was determined to kill the miscreants, although Arjuna wanted to excuse them. Well, that's, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, text 32. So the devotee can excuse the wrongdoer, the Lord does not. And the devotees can't tolerate offenses to other devotees or offenses to the Lord. Lord Krishna's attraction is so powerful that once being attracted by him, one cannot tolerate separation from him. So we may not even be at that point, and I think we're probably not at that point. But once we actually become attracted, really genuinely attracted to Krishna, then you can't tolerate separation from him like the gopis. The gopis were dissatisfied with the work of Brahmaji because Lord Brahma, as creator of this particular universe, created eyelids which obstructed their seeing. Obstructed their seeing Lord Krishna. So for the moment, split second that your eyes blink, they weren't seeing Krishna for that time. And it seemed like a very long time. And so they were very dissatisfied with his faulty creation of this body. So they could not tolerate a moment's blinking of the eyes, for it kept them from seeing their beloved Lord Krishna. So it's not that long of a period, but it's long enough so that the devotees, the gopis, couldn't tolerate it. They actually cursed Lord Brahma. This is from the Bhagavad Gita 11:44. You are the Supreme Lord, to be worshipped by every living being. Thus I fall down to offer you my respectful obeisances and ask your mercy. As a father tolerates the impudence of his son, a friend, the impertinence of a friend, or a husband, the familiarity of his wife, please tolerate the wrongs I may have done. So Arjuna has a friendly relationship with Krishna. He accepts Krishna now in this chapter as his guru. So the friendly talks kind of stop, and now it's instructions. The guru takes the position instructing him. And then later when he sees he's actually the Supreme Lord, because sometimes he would forget because he has a personal relationship. And he's now asking Krishna to forgive him of all his familiarity that he was with Krishna. He never did anything wrong. He never committed offenses, but he's thinking that way. So he's asking Krishna to tolerate. So this is how a devotee should tolerate. The devotees, this is from the Bhagavatam 118:48. The devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even though they are defamed, so they're defamed, they're cheated. I know I get upset if I'm cheated. They're cursed, disturbed, neglected, and get this one, or even killed. They are never inclined to avenge themselves. Of course, if you're killed, you can't really avenge yourself much, but you might even want to have revenge against that person later on even. But even if you're killed, never inclined to avenge themselves, tolerate. This is the most tolerant. So that's how devotees should be. Well, I'm going to just see if anyone has any comments or questions before I go on. Anyone have any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes,
So you said that Prabhupada made all the mlechas into brahmanas.
not all of them.
So not all of them. So then were they to be graded as some Kshatriyas, some Vaishyas, some Shudras?
Some people stayed malicious. And so, and those who did take shelter of Prabhupada, they certainly became closer to being Brahmins, if not Brahmins. I don't think they became Kshatriyas because nobody even knows of a Kshatriya. I mean, some of them became Vaishyas in one sense because they did business. So what's the question or comment? No question.
So the question is, how do you make that division of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra? If there's a possibility of making even a mlecha into a Brahmana, why? I mean, I know for society's sake, you have to kind of divide by tasks that they do or inclined to, but how do you go about doing that?
Well, that's Varnashram Dharma, and that's what Prabhupada, he said half of his work was finished, and that's the other half that was not finished. So that's up to you, Gita Mala, to figure out.
It doesn't seem easy.
Well,
What I'm saying,
is
wouldn't it degrade to what it is today in India, kind of? India had the Varnashrama Dharma at one point, and I'm sure at one point it was followed according to Vedic Shastra, but it degraded into something else, with the Brahmanas thinking they're huffed up and puffed up and high on the totem pole, and the Shudras feeling bad that they're being thrown down on the, bottom of the totem pole, and everybody kind of thinking it's by birth, and it degraded into something totally different. So how do you keep it at that standard, and how do you even decide who's who?
we don't know. I was saying that I think the beginning is if we can start with Vaishyas in one sense,
Yeah, that is an easier category. Yeah.
where the Vaishyas, it's not just business and trade, but it's also protection of
Agriculture. Yeah, agriculture also, right?
yes, agriculture and protection of cows.
Yeah, yeah. So some of our farm communities could be considered Vaishyas. People who do the incense business and all those things could be considered Vaishyas,
I don't think we have an incense business anymore.
No?
It's been gone for probably 40 years.
Oh, I remember reading about them early on.
Incense business. I used to sell spiritual sky incense.
Spiritual sky, yeah.
So the whole business was sold to a devotee and he took it over. It was no longer. Previously, it was maintaining different temples. Each temple would buy the incense and it was good. But I don't know why it stopped, but it stopped. They sold it.
But anyway, something like that, someone who's doing business could be considered Vaishya.
Yeah.
Kshatriya, I don't know.
There's rules to Vaishyas too. One devotee was saying how much profit you can make. You're only supposed to make so much profit, like when you buy and sell. It was like, so we don't know all those rules. I don't know how important they are, but there's rules for Vaishyas.
Didn't some devotee have a donut business somewhere in New York? They made donuts.
Yeah, but that's just his own business. Yeah, it's not supporting the temple.
Oh, not supporting the temple. But do you have to support the temple to be considered a Vaishya?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, look at Dulal Krishna. Is he on here? He's probably taking rest because he's got to get up early to sell donuts.
Yeah, he could be considered a Vaishya.
Yeah. I don't know. It might, maybe everyone from Gujarat is a Vaishya.
But the Shudra category would be very difficult to peg, I would think. I don't know.
Well, it's people who are attracted to that type of work. It's mixed up though. It's just like in other ages, people were situated in the mode of goodness, Brahmins, people were situated in the mode of passion, Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas are passion and ignorance, and the Shudras are ignorance. Now, everyone is totally mixed up. You have some goodness, you have some passion, you have some ignorance. Every one of us would get influenced by these modes. And somebody who's mostly influenced by the mode of goodness, you say that they're in the mode of goodness, but they still have passion and ignorance, or someone in the mode of passion may also have mode of goodness, and so we're mixed up. So similarly, even that you may be a Brahmin, but you also do Shudra work. In ISKCON, Prabhupada has taught us you do the needful. It doesn't matter
Right.
what you are.
So if you're a devotee, it really doesn't make a difference, yeah, whether you're a Shudra or, I mean, if you're a devotee, I don't know how you could even be considered a Shudra, because he's kind of not, no devotee would be completely in the, or even more in the mode of ignorance. I don't know.
No, but you can do that work for Krishna. You do anything for Krishna. There's some devotees, they like to lead kirtan and give class, but they don't want to do anything else because they're Brahmins. I remember speaking with Naranjana Swami about this. He says, yeah, the problem we're having in ISKCON is we're creating these Brahmins, that's all they want to do. But when Prabhupada was here, you did anything. Every Brahmin did whatever, do the needful. Whatever has to be done, you do it. Daivi Varnashram, Jiva just said. You want to come and explain it, Jiva?
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just for, anyway, I don't know what we're not, as I said, we're not saying when Krishna says to, do your duty without being disturbed. To me, it makes no sense to say your job, that's your duty. You can do any job. And how's that helping you? People usually do their job or they get fired. So it's not like you have to tell them to do your job. But your spiritual practices, that's what is important. And that's what Maya is going to stop you from doing. So you have to do those things. You don't let anything stop you from that. Tolerate whatever it is you have to tolerate, but make sure you do it. And that should come even more important than your job. I know Gita Mala knows that because that's what she does when she's supposed to be working.
No, but what I'm saying is you might even have to tolerate some things on your job to keep your job so you could help in your Krishna consciousness.
Yes, you do that. You definitely, we're not, you already do that. Anybody who has a job does their job.
Right.
No, otherwise you won't have a job. You just lose so many jobs. But really, you have to make sure your job doesn't interfere with your Krishna conscious practices. And that's something sometimes, especially with people who have their own business, sometimes.
I was going to laugh and say, yeah, I definitely try not to let my job interfere with my Krishna consciousness.
Yeah,
Isn't that what you were hinting earlier?
One devotee, he had to go to court, for for the temple. And our lawyers were questioning him as how the prosecuting attorneys would question him. So they were asking him different things to make it hard for him to, so that he be more prepared when the other lawyers or whoever it is questions him. So they asked him, because he was in college, and they asked him, did you take any kind of intoxication, drugs while you were in college? And he said, yes. And he said, did you find that the drugs interfered with your college? He said, no, I found that the college interfered with my drugs, so I quit college. So, so, I mean, he was tolerating. Anyway, so you don't let things interfere with what you have to do. And even your work should be part for the temple. You should be giving money from your job to the temple. So that way your work is not just mundane work, just to maintain yourself. There's an example of, is it Sridhar? I forget his name. Jiva, help me with the name. Well, yeah, what is it? Kolavesh Sridhar. He used to make cups from banana leaves or plates from banana leaves, whatever it was, and he would sell them for like practically nothing. But he would give 50% of what he made to I think it was worship of the Ganges, some worship of the Ganges.
Yes,
or
Prabhuji.
what?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, to worship the Ganges. So 50% of nothing. I mean, it's not nothing. It's say you get $1, it's 50 cents he gives to that, and he keeps the other 50 cents for his maintenance. So I mean, that's actually, it's a whole other thing that we're talking about at some meetings of in how what we should do in ISKCON, but of tithings. Christians do this. They give like 10% of their income to the church. So we're saying we should have that in ISKCON. I mean, the actual Prabhupada explains you should give 50%. Nobody can give, maybe they could, but nobody's going to give 50%, practically nobody. But you should try to give a certain percentage, whatever it might be, of your salary for Krishna consciousness. That way, then your job is devotional service. I know another devotee who he gives 50% of his time, whatever time he does for working at his job, he gives that much time to work at the temple. It's not easy, especially if you work more than 40 hours. Gita Mali, you could probably do that, as much time you spend working.
Are you hinting that I'm looking at Krishna consciousness on my computer?
You're attending classes and everything, but anyway, that's okay.
But it is true. I do surf through dandavats.com when I'm at work.
Okay, anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I know. Don't want to hug your whole time.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, who's that?
Amiyon. Dandavat.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah, you. It's hard to see you.
Okay.
You
Can see me better?
I see a little better now, but I see I see Lord Chaitanya, so that's good.
Okay. Okay, Prabhu. So is the question about Lord Chaitanya. And you mentioned that, Prabhu, Krishna cannot tolerate when his devotees gets insulted. But we know that Haridas Thakur got beaten very badly. And how come Lord Chaitanya did not do anything?
Well, he did. He embraced him and took all of his whippings away, all his marks, and So he did that. Why didn't he punish the persons who did it? Or the Kazi or whoever it is?
It wasn't the Kaji.
Who was it?
There's somebody else. I don't know.
Okay.
It is a Muslim ruler, but yeah.
Uh,
Maybe it was a Kaji, but it was a different Kaji. It was on Chat Kaji.
right. So maybe he was busy.
Okay. So what happened, Prabhu? Like, could you please
Anyway,
elaborate a little bit? Yeah.
that person who did it, he's I don't know if it talked about it there, but he's going to get his reaction for it. You know, so whether he gets it immediately or he gets it later, he's going to get it. It's not like he just got away with it.
But doesn't it say, Pyari, that Haridas Thakur never felt any
I-
of the whippings?
Yeah, I would say that Lord Chaitanya allowed that to happen to glorify Haridas Thakur.
Yes, Prabhu. So this is what I heard, and you could correct me, and also the other devotees. So during Mahaprakash Leela, when Lord Chaitanya was calling all the devotees one by one, he called Haridas Thakur, and he showed his back. He said, Haridas, look at this. Do you know why you did not feel pain? Because I took all the lash on my back, and Haridas Thakur could see all the marks on his back. And then Lord Chaitanya also mentioned that, I was going to punish them instantly with my Sudarshan Chakra, but however, while you were getting beaten, you were praying for their deliverance, and then you were praying to me that, please don't do anything, they are ignorant, please don't do anything. This is why you tied my hand, I could not do anything.
Oh, okay,
So,
that's really nice. Yeah, that's
yeah, only
really.
thing I could do is to cover your body with my body, and this is why.
Yeah,
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard too.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking of Sanatan Goswami, where he embraced him and he took all his wounds that he had. That was something else. But I'm glad you're asking questions that you know the answers to.
No, bro, why you're just running by you, make sure that the answer is correct. Or maybe I was thinking about worshipping Lord Narasimhadev instead of Lord Chaitanya, but now I see that no, that's okay.
You can worship them both.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, anybody else have any questions they'd like to answer?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, where are
This is
you?
Madhavkanta.
Madhavkanta, do I see you anywhere?
Do you see me now?
Oh, yeah. You look spooky.
I'm in the car, Prabhuji. So,
Oh, okay. You're driving?
no, in the parking lot.
Okay. Did you get
So,
kicked out?
No.
Okay, what's your question? How to get back in?
So, Prabhuji, should one devotee be more tolerant to another devotee more than the karmi? Okay, so if I say, should devotee be more tolerant to a devotee than karmi?
So devotee does something to you and the karmi does the same thing to you. Should you be more tolerant with the devotee?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Any other questions? I mean, you should be tolerant with everyone, but if you're going to be more tolerant one than the other, be more tolerant with the devotee. We should forgive the offenses of the devotees. We should forgive the offenses of the non-devotees too, but it's harder. But the devotees in particular, all.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Do you have anybody specific in mind?
I hope I didn't do anything, Madhakan Prabhu. Please tolerate me.
No, Prabhuji. In general, no one specific. In general question.
Any other questions or questions? No other questions or comments?
Doesn't the Bhagavad Gita say that we should not see a devotee's faults at all?
Of course.
Yeah, so that's tolerance.
But that's not what he's asking.
Hmm.
He's talking about a devotee who does something to you. You should tolerate it, of course. It's hard to understand. Lots of times people do something and we don't see the whole picture. We don't see what's bothering them. And, you know, I remember one example. I'll just show you how tolerant I am. I went to a gas station, I got gas, and I'm going up and I gotta pay the guy. And I don't remember what oh yeah, he said, what gas pump were you at? Or something like that. And then I said, what are you so upset about? I just, you know, I just, and then see, he was really, really like angry. And I didn't like it that he was, you know, just yelling at me for no reason. And then it was a very good experience because then I responded in the same mood that he asked me something. I don't remember how we talked, but remember. And then he said, I stutter, and the only way he can talk is if he's really forceful and like angry, then he can talk. Otherwise, he stutters. So, I saw he didn't do anything wrong, but at the time, I was thinking he was not very nice. I didn't know if it was just me or to everybody. The guy's just why should I buy my gas from him? But it's because he stuttered and he couldn't talk unless he was really intense. Then he can talk without stuttering. I mean, that is a kind of a crude example, but it's an example of we don't know what's happening with the other person when they do something to us. There may be just a total misunderstanding. We're thinking one thing and they're actually thinking something else. So we jump to conclusions. Another time, I'm behind this car and was at a light. The light turns green and somebody beeps their horn. I didn't beep my horn. The light just turned green. And then the guy thinks I did it. And I told him, I am not the one who beeped the horn. And then he was like, but it's like, so you misunderstand things. I don't want to get blamed for beeping a horn if I didn't do it.
So, Pyari Prabhuji,
yeah.
So being just tolerant externally, but in the mind we always carry some grudges. Like, let's say we fight with someone, maybe devotee, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just stop you right there. The verse says to be tolerant without being disturbed. So you're still disturbed. You're not tolerant.
Correct. So that's not a real tolerance, right? Even though externally I show.
Right.
Okay.
That's not real tolerance. That's not real humility. When you're the greatest. You're so wonderful. That's it's people do so many things that's not real. So to tolerate like that, no, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I hate that person. I want to kill him. That's not really tolerance. It makes it pretty clear without being disturbed. You have to tolerate. So, and if something bothers you with anything, you should talk to some devotee about it that you trust. But rather than hold on to it for weeks, days, months, years, it's not good. Better you talk about it. Or if somebody in particular, you can talk to that person who did something, or talk to someone else a senior devotee to talk to that devotee with you. But people shouldn't hold grudges because that's really bad in spiritual life. So I've gone extra, a little longer than normal, 1 minute over, hoping if I went over, I wouldn't have to take this test. Did you write a test, Rasaraj?
Yes, Prabhu.
You did? Oh. Okay, so it's time for the quiz. And no other questions, right?
Just a comment. What did Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati say? Even when it's,
Oh,
we
yeah.
always quote that.
Even when something becomes intolerable, still you should tolerate. You can always tolerate more. Okay, so thank you all very much. And I thank you for tolerating my class. And I like to thank myself for tolerating some people who won't put on their cameras. Okay, time for the quiz. Who is paying attention? I know one question that's going to be asked, and I'm not saying it, but afterwards I'll say it. Okay, we're ready. Yep, that's the first question. I knew that you were going to ask that.
Okay, I see almost 70-80% answered already came. Maybe we can take 1 more minute. All right, I think we got all the everyone answered. Let me end the quiz. Here you go, result. So what is the importance of Kaunteya and Bharata in this today's verse? So basically, Krishna wanted to show that he's using Kaunteya because Arjuna is coming from his dynasty, like Kaunteya is like his aunt's son, right? And Bharata means showing that Bharata was right, a great dynasty of your father's side also. So that is the importance. You should tolerate. Basically, that's what his answer is. Great heritage brings great responsibility in discharge of their duty. What are the example of tolerating duality? So we discussed today, like early morning bath in the month of winter season, women cooking in May and June, to fight as a religion, even with the relatives if needed. So these first three points are correct. Someone, I mean, three of them selected go to the office. That's
Go to office.
then next question is, it's from the direct translation of the verse. The answer is winter and summer. uh, who can tolerate, I mean, the happiness and distress like winter and summer, which is not permanent, which comes and goes. That's what Prabhupada is saying. And how can one get liberated from Maya? By spiritual knowledge and devotion. That's what is the correct answer. Everyone selected. That's great. And when should a devotee not tolerate? So we discuss many examples today. So one is like when someone is blaspheming a pure devotee, right? So that should not tolerate. If someone is blaspheming yourself or hurting you ourselves, then we should tolerate, but not if someone is blaspheming a pure devotee. Nectar of Devotion gives very nice description on that. And which great personality example were discussed? Tolerate it's like Prahalad Maharaj and Haridas Thakur, the two personality, two great devotees we discussed today who tolerated. I think that's all for today. Thank you everyone for participating in the quiz. Hare Krishna.
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय हरे कृष्णा
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
थैंक यू प्रभु जी हरे कृष्णा
His Grace Pyari Mohan Prabhu ki jai.
जय हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Krishna Prabhuji. One second, I'm opening it. So if you're ready, you can start.
Okay, Prabhuji. Oh. Okay. क्लेशो अधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशो अधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् चेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिर् अवाप्यते क्लेशो अधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशो अधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशो अधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal future of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Deepti Mataji, would you like to say next?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. क्लेशो अधिकतारस्तेषम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते 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 क्लेशो अधिकतारस्तेषम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते. Translation. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Haribol Prabhuji.
Haribol Mataji. Anuchinta Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. क्लेशोऽधिकातरस्तेषम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशोऽधिकातरस्तेषम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशोऽधिकातरस्तेषम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal future of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Harini Mataji.
Hare Krishna only.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
क्लेशो दिक्तारास्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देवाद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशोऽधिकतारासं तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशाधिकतारास्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied.
Thank you, Mataji. Janvirani Mataji.
Yes, Prabhu. क्लेश अधिकतरः तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिः दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेश अधिकतरः तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिः दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशः अधिकतरः तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिः दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते.
क्लेशः अधिकतरः तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिः दुःखं देहविभक्ति अवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Prabhu, if somebody is give somebody a chance, then my Prabhuji will be back.
Sure, Mataji. I will decide.
Okay, Prabhu.
क्लेशोऽधिकरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाप्तिरवाप्यते. 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 For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied.
Hare Krishna. क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. 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 For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied.
Thank you. There is Prabhuji.
No, Prabhuji is still busy, so he won't be able.
All right, Mataji. Oh, Venki Prabhu is there. Venki Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देवाद्भिरवाप्यते. क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. 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 For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in the discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, Prabhuji ji.
No, Prabhuji is still busy, so he won't be
Okay,
able.
okay. It's fine, Mataji. Anybody else would like to recite? All right.
Yes,
All right.
Prabhuji. You want me to
Yes,
recite?
Mataji. Go ahead, Mataji.
Okay, Prabhuji. क्लेशो अधिकारतस्
अधिकतारस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशो अधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते क्लेशो अधिकातरस्तेषाम् अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखं देहवाद्भिरवाप्यते. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal future of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We will recite tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna Mataji.
everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Can I start?
Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Okay. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishnaprasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminithi Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nasimha Kavacham. Nasimha Kavacham Vakshe Prahladenoditam Pura Sarva Raksha Karam Punyam Sarva Upadravanashanam Sarva Sampatkaram Chaiva Swarga Moksha Pradayakam Dhyatva Narsimham Devesham Hema Simhasanastitam Vivratasyam Trinayanam Sharadindu Samaprabham Lakshmiya Lingita Vamangam Vibhutibir Upashritam Chaturbhujam Komalangam Swarnakundalashobitam Saroja Shobito Raskam Ratnakeyuramudritam Tapta Kanchana Sankasham Pita Nirmala Vasasam Indradi Suramaulishta Spuran Manikya Deeptibihi Virajita Pada Dvandvam Shanka Chakradi Hetibihi Garutmata Chavinayat Stuyamanam Mudanvitam Swaharat Kamala Samvasam Kritva tu Kavacham Patet Narsimho me Shirah Patu Lokaraksharta Sambhavaha Sarva Gopi Stambhavasa Phalam me Rakshitutvanim Narasimho me Drishau Patu Soma Suryagni Lochanaha Smritam me patu naraharihi munivaryastuti priyaha nasam me simhanashastu mukam lakshmi mukapriyaha sarva vidyadipah patu nasimho rasanam mama vaktram patva induvadanam sada prahalada vanditaha narasimha patu me kantam skanda bhuvaradanantakrat दिव्यास्त्र शोभित भुजः नरसिंहा पात मे भुजौ करौ मे देव वरदो नरसिंहा पातु सर्वतः हृदयं योगी साध्यश्च निवासं पातु मे हरिः मध्यं पातु हिरण्याक्षा वक्षकुक्षिविदारणः नाभिं मे पातु नरहरिः स्वनाभि ब्रह्म संस्तुतः ब्रह्माण्डकोटयः कट्यां यस्यासौ पातु मे कटिं गुह्यं मे पातु गुह्यानां मन्त्राणां गुह्यरूपदृक् ऊरु मनोभवः पातु जानुनी नररूपदृक् जङ्गे पातु दराबारा हर्तायो सौनृकेशरी सुरराज्यप्रदः पातु पादौ मे नरहरीश्वरः सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः पातु मे सर्वशस्तनुं मनोग्रह पूर्वतः पातु महावीराग्रजोग्नितः महाविष्णुर्दक्षिणे तु महाज्वालस्तु नैऋतः पश्चिमे पातु सर्वेषु दिशि मे सर्वतोमुखः नरसिंहः पातु वायव्यं सौम्याम्भूषणविग्रहः ईशान्यं पातु भद्रो मे सर्वमङ्गलदायकः संसारभयतः पातु मृत्योर्मृत्युर्नृकेशरी इदं नरसिंहकवचं प्रह्लादमुखमण्डितं भक्तिमान् यः पठेन्नैत्यं सर्वपापैः प्रमुच्यते पुत्रवान् धनवान् लोके दीर्घायुरुपजायते यं यं कामयते कामं तं तं प्राप्नोत्यसंशयं सर्वत्र जयमप्नोति सर्वत्र विजयी भवेत् भूम्यान्तरिक्षदिव्यानां ग्रहाणां विनिवारणं वृश्चिकोरगसम्भूता विशापहरणं परं ब्रह्मराक्षसयक्षाणां दूरोत्सारणकारणम् भुजे वा तालपत्रे वा कवचं लिखितं शुभं करमूले धृतं येन सिद्ध्येयुः कर्मसिद्धयः देवासुरमनुष्येषु स्वं स्वमेव जयं लभेत् एकसन्ध्यं त्रिसन्ध्यं वा यः पटे नियतो नरः सर्वमङ्गलमाङ्गल्यं भुक्तिं मुक्तिं च विन्दति 32 पठेत् शुद्धात्मनं नृनं कवचस्य मन्त्रस्य मन्त्रसिद्धिः प्रजायते अनेन मन्त्रराजेन कृत्वा भस्माभिर्मन्त्रणम् तिलकं बिभ्र्याद्यस्तु तस्य ग्रहभयं हरेत् त्रिवारं जपमानस्तु दत्तं भार्याभिमन्त्र्य च प्रसायेत् यो नरो मन्त्रं नरसिंहध्यानमाचरेत् तस्य रोगा प्रणश्यन्ति एचस्यु कुक्षिसम्भवः किमत्र बहुनोक्तेन नरसिंह सदृशो भवेत् मनसा चिन्तितं यत्तु स तच्चाप्नोत्य संशयम् गर्जन्तं गर्जयन्तं निजभुजपटलं स्फोटयन्तं हतन्तं दीपयन्तं तापयन्तं दिवि भुवि दितिजं क्षेपयन्तं क्षिपन्तं क्रन्दन्तं रोषयन्तं दिशि दिशि सततं संहरन्तं भरन्तं वीक्षन्तं पूर्णयन्तं करनिकरसतैर्दिव्यसिंहं नमामि इति श्रीब्रह्माण्डपुराणे प्रह्लादोक्तं श्रीनरसिंहकवचं सम्पूर्णम् श्री 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 नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय भक्त प्रहलाद महाराज की जय
जय
श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय
Now we'll read from the Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Shukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vriteshu Surabirra Bipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Enum Kvanantam Aravinda Dayaladaksham Barhavatam Samhasitambuda Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi Ratna Gadam Pranaya Keli Kala Vilasam Shamam Tribanga Niyata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pashyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitamachyutamanadi Manantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayauvanamscha Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhaktau Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Muni Pungavanam Soapi Asti Yat Prapadachimni Avichintya Tatve Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Eko api asau rachaitum jagadanda kotim yakchaktirasti jagadanda chayadadanta andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yadbhava Bhavita Diyo Manujastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasanayana Bhushaha Shuktairya Eva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pradibhavitabhis Tabirya Eva Nijarupataya Kalabi Atma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Lochanena Sadai Yam Ramachintya Gunaswaru Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadimurti Shukalani Yamena Tistan Avataram Akaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu कृष्णस्वयं पुमान्यो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषम् अहं भजामि स्य भवतो कोटिष्वशेषवसुधात् विभूतिभिन्नं तद्ब्रह्मनिष्कलन्तमशभूतं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि माया जगन्दसतां सूरे त्रैगुण्यतद्विषयवेदविधाय मा तमहं भजामि आनन्दचिन्मयरसत्मथाय मांशु यः प्राणिनां प्रतिफलं स्मरतामुपेत्य लीलायितेन भुवनानि जयति अजस्रं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin and he is the prime cause of all causes. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in a boat built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with the figure of beauty tinged with hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, around whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in the pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shyam Sundar is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests in the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure, unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha, yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayam by drilling the respiration, or by the gnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas, by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm, Goloka, with Radha, resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities in the company of her confidants, Sakhis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual Rasha. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyam Sundara Krishna himself with the inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their hearts of hearts with the eye of devotion, tinged with the salva of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna in the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Narasimha, Vamana, etc., as his subjective portions. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman mentioned in the Upanishads. Being differentiated from the infinity of glories of the mundane universe appears as the indivisible, infinite, limitless truth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is the absolute substantive principle, being the ultimate entity in the form of the support of all existence, whose external potency embodies the threefold mundane qualities which sattva, rajas, and tamas, and diffuses the Vedic knowledge regarding the mundane world. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose glory ever triumphantly dominates the mundane world by the activity of his own pastimes, being reflected in the mind of recollecting souls as the transcendental entity of ever blissful cognitive rasa. Shri Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha
Uttarapisha
kripa sindhubhya
Sindhubhya
eva
eva cha
patitanam
Patitanam
pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Nanta Koti Vaishnavanda
Vaishnavanda ki
ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
jai.
Hare Krishna.